Hi guys, in this video I'm going to be looking at a section of the spec about your local area and how past and present influences have shaped that area. So you need to be looking at your local area. I'm going to talk about the local area that I live in. Some of these past and present connections are positive and some of them are negative. If you're looking at regeneration, they're mostly going to be negative, but you may live in an area that your local area is quite positive, for example. So I'm just going to run through some of these. Some of them overlap quite a bit, so if you get a question on this, they can go in, you don't have to talk about all of them, and they can go in different sections. So I'm going to be looking at the place where we are in the southeast, and I'm going to start with regional issues and influences. So here in where we live, there was paper mills. So we had quite a lot of paper mills in the town where I'm from, and they closed down. So from a regional point of view, it went into decline, and that industry closed, so it left a lot of people unemployed. So the legacy that we have here in our local area is that we have had a lot of unemployment in the past. So that shaped the area and made it have a need for regeneration. From a transport point of view, we have high-speed rail links, which I'll talk about in another section as well. We have a train line that goes past us. We have HS2. And that's had the impact of having a lot of people live here, but not necessarily spend any money here, and they commute to London. So that has a negative impact in some ways because the people don't spend the money in the town. So the town still needs to be regenerated because there isn't footfall in the local shops, etc., or the local services to justify more shops and services being opened. So that they are kind of regional factors that have an impact on our local area. From a national point of view, again, we have the high-speed train link, and it leaves this town to be a commuter town, or what we call a sleeper town. So many people live here, but they commute to London, and they unfortunately spend a lot of their money in London, and they don't spend it here. So the consequence of that, like I said before, because that's a regional and a national point, is that we end up with a situation where the town doesn't have enough people using the town to justify people coming and investing. So nobody wants to invest here, or very few. Also, from a national point of view, we have the housing policy in the UK, and we've had lots and lots of new homes built here. So we've got a very high population actually, and not a lot of services to go along with them, because obviously population increases very often before services do, because local councils quite often will need to build the houses first in order to get the people to live there, in order to have that population that people will invest. So it's a little bit of a catch-22 position there. So the national government policy of allowing lots of houses to go ahead takes a little bit of time for the services to catch up, and that's the situation that we have here, is that we have a population of about 55,000, yet we don't have kind of services to match. So schools will struggle, doctors' surgeries, it'll be hard to get an appointment, and that kind of thing, and the services and the goods in the town just don't reflect the population that we have, and that takes a while then for there to be that population, and then try to attract investors into the town to regenerate it, to bring us better goods and services, etc. So we have an issue with a difficult amount of services for people and a high population. So that's quite negative. From an international point of view, here we have EU migration. So there's lots and lots of migrants. We are in the southeast, and because we're part of the European Union, we have free movement of people within that. We have lots of EU migrants here from Eastern Europe. Now that has an impact on schools. So many of the schools have a lot of migrant children in them, which is not a problem, obviously, but there's overcrowding quite often. Obviously shops, we get lots of shops on the high street, so it shows the impact of that, because there's many shops that are specific to those regions, maybe Lithuanian. I know we have a Lithuanian shop, we have some Polish shops that sell Polish food and things like that, which is obviously from a positive point, because we've got lots of different types of culture, etc. But it can lead to conflict. So the other issue is that we have got lots of migration, then we do have the issue that we can have conflict with local people. And that's often to do with overstretching of services, etc. And local people seeing these migrants in a negative light, mostly because there's an impact on schools and times and queues for dentists and things like that. So that's from an international point of view that has had an impact on our local area. And from a global point of view, I think you can look in your local area at what the global shift has done in your local area. So here we've had the closure. We had 2 paper mills here, and we used to produce paper, and obviously a lot of people were employed. So the global shift of manufacturing abroad, that global aspect has had an impact of shutting down a lot of industry. And a lot of heavy industry in the UK, and a lot of manufacturing has shut down. So if you're in a local place where there was a lot of manufacturing, then you will have seen global factors have a big impact of closing down businesses and closing down factories, etc., and shifting to Asia. And therefore what that leaves you with is high levels of unemployment within your local area. So they are, some of those were in the past and some of them are in the present, because sometimes the exam questions ask about past and present influences that have shaped or connections that have shaped your area. So you just have to think about which things happened in the past, so the global shift, and which things are in the present now. And there will be a little bit of overlap, but don't worry too much about that, because when you're talking about an assess or evaluate question, you're talking about the impact of that. It's my dog you can hear in the background barking at my son. Anyway, they are past and present connections. So you will have to look at your local area and see if those past and present connections are good. If you live in a place like Reading, perhaps that will be good, or Canary Wharf, which we've looked at. That was our contrasting place, but it might be your local place. And our local place is an area that needs to be regenerated, which some of your local areas will be. So you just have to look at what those factors are that have had an impact on your places.